Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host and partner, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian. Today, we've got a very special guest for you. We were listing all of the things that she is, and I don't think we could possibly fit it all in one frame here. So, mom, author, instructor. Oh, something happened on her hair. That's right. I think it's going to go okay. It's going to be a fascinating conversation, despite any technical issues that may appear to be happening. Because I think we're going to be okay. Anyways, another episode of Just Two Dads. This is a great thing, Laura, about going live and doing what we do, right? So, you guys, this is going to be a fantastic conversation, full of energy. This is going to be an amazing episode today. Brian, get your stuff together. Here we go.
That was cute.
That was cute.
Yeah, when it closed, like,
yeah.
I was jamming.
Makes us feel official.
It does.
We'll end with that as well. So to give you a little wraparound, little bookend there. Yeah, you guys get the sense that this is gonna be kind of a fun conversation. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode. We're now at episode 101. We just crossed over. Last week was our 100th episode of Just Two Dads, and Sean and I are very proud of that accomplishment and of that milestone. And what a great way to kick off our next 100 shows with this amazing, energetic being. You guys are going to get a chance to meet her in just a second. Just want to thank everybody who's catching us live on Facebook. I see Jordan's already there. It's my daughter, Jordan Laura. She hangs with us a little bit on Facebook. So, and for anybody else joining us on Facebook Live, welcome. Great to have you here. If you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel at We Are Just Two Dads, please subscribe, please share, and let us know if there's other content or other folks that you think we should be talking to. Our goal with our podcast is to shine a light on the folks that are doing amazing things that impact the entire community of folks with special needs, whatever that looks like, medically complex, special needs, certain disabilities, whatever the issues may be. Everybody has the same needs. Some folks need a little bit more. So our special needs community gets served by amazing warriors. Sean and I set out to do this a couple of years ago to highlight those folks that are doing amazing work. Today is no exception. If you're catching us on podcasts, hello, welcome. Please send us a note at some point at wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. And if you're catching us on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, hello, family. Looking forward to seeing you. And we're gonna get into the show. Very excited to be here. Very excited to be engaged in this conversation today. So before we get to our special guest, Laura, I'm just gonna throw it over to Sean to say hello. And Sean, you had a chance to talk with Laura a little bit prior to the show, and so maybe share a little bit about her in this conversation, and then let's get into it. Yeah, how you feeling? You good?
I'm feeling great. I'm always, whenever you ask me that at this point in the show, my answer is always truthful, but may sound boring because I'm always letting you know that I'm grateful and thankful and I'm excited, but I really, truly am. And the one thing about today's show is that I feel that we're going to have, high energy throughout more so than anything. And just, excited to have our guest here. And that is none other than Mrs. Laura Hales.
Hi.
Hi.
You're like, energy. It's going to be amazing. Laura.
There it is.
Hi.
But even that had some energy. So, when we had our conversation prior off air, we talked about, okay, see, now it's already affected me. Usually we begin with your origin. You probably just think of yourself as just someone, going about your business, doing what you do. But people that we feature on the show are warriors and people that, help society in general and the special needs community. And everyone that's a hero has powers, and their powers come from their origin. And you might not have gotten bitten by a spider or come from another planet, but the way you were raised and everything, always has something to do with how you deal with diagnosis and things like that are put before you. And, for those that are watching the video version of it, whether you're looking live or looking at this after the fact on YouTube, I have to ask, because behind Laura in the background are these puppets. We had a conversation about them. Before we jump into your origin, tell everybody about those puppets back there really quick.
I'm just creepily obsessed with puppets. Thank you.
Okay.
Just kidding.
That
They're
explains
like,
that.
"And
That's our show, everybody.
thank you.
Goodbye. Thanks.
That's gonna be it for me."
Yeah.
No, my mom. So my books are about my autistic son, and this is flipped, so it's hard for me to go the right direction. And this inflatable drummer. So if you've ever seen one of those wacky inflatable arm flailing tube men, yes, they have
Yeah.
a name. It was that, but as this big drummer shape. So all of our stories are true stories. And he was in Korea, where we were living at the time, drumming away, trying to advertise cell phones. And so that's what the story is about. And my mom, being the wizard that she is, just whipped those up because she's
Wow.
so creative. It's like you can see my face if you're listening. I'm a little disgusted. Like, it's a little offensive how talented she is. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
oh, I've published 2 books.
Yeah.
Like, have I measured up yet? You know, and that's not the vibe
That's
she
funny.
gives off, but like, wow, she just made up the pattern.
Wow.
I
That's
can't
amazing.
even.
Well, with that said, let's go to the beginning, because I'm sure people that have heard that part already, they're thinking, wait a minute, your mom, Korea, Sin on the Spectrum. Hold on. So
I've
let's
written
go to
2 books. I've written 2 books. By the way, she slipped that in. That was awesome.
Yeah, just
because she is
slip that
author.
in there.
For those
Yes.
that are
So
seeing it, her
Hashtag
name's
author,
actually
hashtag autism advocate, hashtag.
yeah.
so let's
This
go
is
to
the queen of hashtags
to
for today.
let's go to the beginning, which obviously prepares you for what comes after that, as far as your advocacy and everything, because I know you grew up kind of all over the place, and but let's start with that.
Sure. I was born in Japan. My dad's
Okay.
Japanese. That's always like, oh, Korea? How'd that happen? So we grew up in the Seattle area and loved it. As far as Sean's comments about how it affected my life continuing forward and like how it helped advocacy wise where I am, I have always had this outrageously special gift. And I say like gift as in I didn't cultivate this at all. So I mean actual gift for having really sincere, fabulous friendships with special needs kids. And that has always been my whole life. And I don't know where it came from. As fabulous as my parents are, I don't remember specifically being taught these are people too. And there was just something very natural and flowy about the relationships that I had. I didn't see them as separate. I just saw them as people because surprise, guess what they are? And
Right.
I know some people are like,
Right?
I can't believe that. Wait, hold
She
on. Let me
just
break
said
it
they're
down
people.
real quick.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of the same interests that I had. What I appreciated most about a lot of them is like for my friend, her name was Becky. She had Down syndrome and she would dance whenever she wanted to, whether there was music or whether there wasn't music. I had a friend named Megan who insisted that you called her Britney Spears. She wrote Britney Spears on every single one of her papers. She had
These
like,
are kids you went to school with that were
yeah.
contemporary years. Wow.
And
Okay.
so if you go to the Seattle area, I'm sure Megan Kennedy and Britney Spears. Yeah, I was just really good friends with actual Britney Spears. And my friend Becky, they would just like do these dances and they were so fantastically themselves that there was
Right.
something about the genuineness with which they lived their lives that I was like, I want to be part of this. This is something that all of these kids around me are trying to do from like a backwards way. They're trying to find themselves by acting like other people, right?
Interesting.
Right.
And
Right.
here are
Right.
these people acting like themselves and not really trying to find themselves. They just are themselves. And I
Right. Right.
loved it. So,
Wow.
for example, my friend Becky, we were in the same class from second grade all the way through high school. I only found out later that her mom had requested that she be in my class every single year.
No way.
Oh
my God.
Wow.
I love that.
My first
Fantastic.
book is dedicated to my friend Tyler. There's Tyler. And if you're listening, you can't see him. I'm showing a picture in my book. And one of his favorite things just happens to be a marching band like uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, hello. Like,
Wow.
it's like the same. But anyway, he's autistic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still friends with him and his family. He lives in like a facility. He seems really happy. He at the time I was thinking in the back of my mind, I really enjoy these friendships. And part of me, for shame was like, and good for you. This means you're a good person, And I mean, talk about egg on your face. And now that I have 2 autistic children. One is almost 12 and one is 6. And these people who were willing to give me their time and their expertise on living their lives genuinely and how to talk to them, how to love on them, how to get past whatever differences there are and just engage with them openly made me the mom that I am. And so all growing up, people would tell me, you're going to have a kid with Down syndrome, right? And I'd be like, yeah, kind of. And his name was going to be Rudy because it was going to be like the movie and everyone's going to cheer for him and people were going to be pumped. And it wasn't until, that was all talk until I had my kids.
So let's back up a little bit. So you were born in Japan, moved to Seattle at what age?
I was 1.5-ish. My sisters were older. So
that was my next question, whether or not you were an only child. Okay.
I'm the baby.
Okay.
How many siblings? How many total?
2. I have 2 older sisters.
Okay, just 3 total. Gotcha.
And there was enough of a gap in age that I was the one that got teased because I was the little one, but also very doted on, and the rules bent for me constantly.
Right. That doesn't require that much of a gap, by the way, as you probably know by now.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so you've got that. So you're in high school in the Seattle area. You're making these connections with kids in the special needs community, and they just happen to be, your friends. So you're in high school. Where do you go from there? Well, let me back up. What kind of work did your parents do?
Oh, that's a good question. My mom taught Japanese at, and she's a tall white woman teaching Japanese at an elementary school. Not for a super long time. She was a crafter, but when I say crafter, I mean next level, know?
Right.
Sure.
So she was the woman doing all the craft shows and honestly driving us around every day. My sisters and I all did ballet really intensely with the big ballet school in Seattle. And so driving to and from Seattle every day was a full-time job in and of itself. My dad worked for a paper company. I feel like that's it's not Dunder Mifflin, surprisingly.
Not Dunder Mifflin? Okay.
It's not Michael Scott. Okay. His name is Scott. Can you imagine? Oh, if that was your dad. It's called Daishowa America, which was later turned to Nippon Paper Industry. So it's a Japanese American company. And they use I think it was 80% was recycled paper. And funnily enough, I never know if funnily is a word
I like it though.
Say it. And then I'm that felt uncomfortable. So
funnily enough.
I promise I'm intelligent.
We'll stick with it. That's okay.
So he ended up, he was the translator, the vice president, and eventually the president of the company. It was really valuable to me watching my dad growing up. And I didn't realize it at the time, of course. The way the Japanese approach owning a company and running a company is they are the first to take pay cuts. They are the first, instead of laying people off, he would take pay cuts. And that's just the Japanese way. So that was really valuable for me to see that to be the leader, you're the one first that takes responsibility for the entire company. So even if it's out of your control, if funds aren't going well, obviously it's a paper company. We're living in a technological world. All of those fallbacks went on him and his pay, which was really, again, I didn't think about it until I was older, but really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like your parents gave you a very service-oriented example in terms of how you lead and then treat others as well. So then lead us from high school to what did you do after high school then?
So I went to a college in Utah called Utah Valley University. I got a full-ride scholarship for playing my clarinet.
Okay.
boop, 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 boop. I never realized how expensive. Like I was so naive as far as the prices of college. It was something that my parents were going to pay for, which I'm even that now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they were willing to pay for all of my college.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, cool, thanks, peace.
A full ride is a full ride, though.
Right. And so they were like, oh my gosh, we're so glad that you got a full ride. And here I am on the flip side as a parent being like, I can't believe that I just thought, and I have friends now, I'm 36. I had to think really hard. I'm 36 and I have friends now that are still paying off their college loans. And I'm like, that has not been a thing for me. And I'm so grateful. The person who helped me get those scholarships, I didn't apply. I didn't go in to do anything for it. My professor, my band teacher, just came and he was like, here, fill this out. And I was like, okay, it'll be half scholarship, half ride this year, and it'll be full next year.
That's fantastic.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
An amazing person. Amazing.
What's his name?
His name, well, we called him Butch, but his name was Wayne Erickson. He passed away
oh my gosh.
About maybe 6-ish years ago now. And he was, he always made fun of how big and manly my legs were. I know now you're all curious because you're only looking at my upper body. I have super muscular legs. If you've ever seen or observed that Japanese people tend to have larger, shorter muscles in their legs. And I am no exception. And I'm a personal trainer. So my legs are massive. I have the lower half of a linebacker who shaves their legs is how I'm currently built with
picturing that
strawberry poof on top is what's going on. Why I don't wear heels. It just looks strange. It just looks a little strange.
Okay.
But yeah, it was.
For those who are just listening, by the way, Laura's hair is magenta. What would we call that? Is it?
Yeah, actually magenta? It is. You don't know how many. It's usually older people say red, and I'm like, oh, close.
No, it's not red.
That's all right.
That's magenta.
Yes, it's magenta. Yeah, so it's a lovely magenta.
But I think going on unfortunately,
with that apparently muscular legs that like linebacker legs. So
yes,
picture that linebacker legs, red. I'm sorry, magenta coif. There it is.
He's not around to hear it, but to shout out to not only to Wayne Erickson, but to anyone, but to teachers, official and unofficial. I heard a commercial today. I forget what the product was for. I didn't even know what it was, but they were talking about how teachers. Children really are the future of tomorrow, and teachers shape the way, in terms of, how that happens. And you think of teachers in the most official sense, but we're all teachers. We teach people how to treat us. We teach people how to treat each other. And he did something. And it's funny, as you were saying that he took the form and says, yeah, just fill this out. It'll be this, it'll be that. He's doing that as though he draws breath, just fill that out, just here's a cup of water. Let me, you're doing the simplest thing that has the biggest effect. And that just goes for so many of us on a universal level. We could spend the whole day talking about that topic alone. So that takes place. You go to school in Utah. And then from there, what do you do next?
I get married. I meet my husband. It's such a cringy story. My really good friends were in a band. And his roommate was the guitarist in that band. And so we were always at the same shows together, being young and cool and thinking, we're not like groupies, we're actually with the band. So this is totally different. We're actually friends with them. And we'd all be together. Yeah, official. So we'd all get together after and before shows. And what's funny is that I was more interested in his roommate who played the guitar. And so I was like, maybe if I get this guy's number, I'll be around in the same area because I'm an outrageously, apparently manipulative, horrific person.
Yeah, so, sounds like it.
Joke's on me. I dated for a while. And I remember it was the first time in a dating relationship where we were friends for a while first. I know that's a novel idea. Apparently, that works. We were friends for quite a while, and I was like, I can attest to that. the spark is there. And then after 3 months, I was like, Laura, you got to stop trailing this guy along. You need to just have a little smooch and see if there are sparks. Because if not, y'all are good friends, and quit letting him pay for dinner.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
He's in college. Like, that's rough, And so let's just say that I was like, oh, he had me fooled, because I was under the impression that I was like the first lady he's ever like, held hands with, etc. That smooch proved wrong. And swept off my feet from there. And we've been married 15 years now.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow. Awesome.
Okay. So you've got 2 boys. You have all these things leading up to that moment. Tell us about what takes place. And the one thing we always talk about, which we relate to and everyone does, that is a parent, particularly of a child with special needs, is, your child is born. You've got all these hopes and aspirations and everything, and these visions. And if you think about it, it's so funny because we're prepared you want your child to be free and be who they want to be. At the same time, you have all these ideas of what they're going to like, and your favorite music, your favorite TV show, all this kind of stuff. And then when it comes to the day of diagnosis, there's also sort of, depending on the severity of the situation, a mourning period, because you have to let go of the child that does not exist and didn't come to be, and the child that you have. So tell us about that, particularly with your firstborn.
Sure. Luckily for me, I had my alarm bells ringing from quite an early time. So I saw a lot of red flags. I knew that we were being very consistent as parents, and yet the consistent techniques that we used that were, in my opinion, very thorough and well thought out, like data-driven kind of techniques, were not effective. And
at what age would you say?
This is at like maybe 2.5. So where cognitively, you're starting to get to stages where you can set some expectations for behavior. And there's some reciprocity on their side of, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to do that. But the energy level, the inability to attend or focus for very long, and then
eye contact.
He was pretty great with eye contact. Both of my kids were.
Interesting.
Yeah, my second child actually has a specific profile within autism that's actually has some characteristics that are almost counter autism, or just things that are unique even within the autistic community. So
interesting.
I have 2 entirely different parenting techniques and things that are effective for my kids, because neurologically it's what they need and what works.
Right.
So you think you got one kid figured out. You think you got this autism thing, figured out, and then whoosh, I was like, yeah, right, psych.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But for my older son, I think it was at about 3 years that once we saw him among his peers. So he was in like a preschoolish setting, and all the things that I had been saying were just had a very obvious contrast. Because I don't know how many times I'd say, I'm just really concerned about this. And how many very well-intentioned people would say, well, he's a boy. Well, boys are hyper. Well, he's kind of crazy. Boys got little ants in their pants, or whatever all the stuff is that they say.
They develop late. I
don't blame them. It was not helpful for me. It made me feel like I just must be a more terrible parent. I just must be really failing him if there isn't anything going on, and this is the behavior that's happening. It did not help. Now, I don't blame them, because what they are trying to say is, you're uncomfortable, and I'm sorry you're uncomfortable. So I'm going to try to say something that makes you feel not comfortable. So I don't blame them for saying that. But once we saw, and my husband began to see, compared to peers at the same age, we saw the kids that my friends were talking about, the wiggly ones. We saw them. And that was not what our child was displaying. Like our child was under, like they had like a little performance where you'd go and sing in front of the class in the preschool. And there were the wiggly ones who were just kind of like looking around and like poking stuff. And my kid was like under the desk over there on the side of the room. That's different.
Disconnected. Yeah.
Well, right. And just not really interested. There wasn't a lot of willingness to do something he's not interested in. And that's when I was like, we need to look more. And I had one friend, I'll be so forever grateful for this friend, who was an occupational therapist, and her son was also in that class. And when I asked her, and I just said, it's just so frustrating because I understand that he has a lot more energy, but as far as range of like what's typical versus this is an actual diagnostic thing, I'm at a loss because everyone just tells me, even my pediatrician, like, nah, whatever, development. And she's like, it never hurts to seek more information. It never hurts. And then maybe you find out yes, and maybe you find out no. But otherwise, either way, it's just information. And I think that was her very kind way of pointing me in the right direction. Because I understand someone coming up to you and saying, hey, did you know your kid's autistic? Because like,
right.
tell is so uncomfortable. Is that our role to play? But at the same time, the child is probably suffering because they're not getting the help that they need. The parent is struggling like crazy. What's my role here as either this random person or acquaintance in your life? So I love what she did, where she just kind of sent me in the direction where the appropriate people could give me that response and that information.
Wow. That's something else. It just gets me to thinking that, our role as parents is, it's always to be there for our children, to be nurturing, to care, and to equip them with enough skills to leave the nest, teach them to fish on their own. But especially when it comes to not just special needs, but autism in particular, our real job is to make sure that we help them get what they specifically need, be able to get out what they get out. And it's, I'm conscious, I'm awake and aware and all this kind of stuff, or try to be. My son, some people may have heard me tell the story before. My son was upset one day coming from school a couple years ago. And on the drive home, I started singing street signs thinking that would calm him down. Well, what it started since then, it worked. But what happens is whenever we're in a car and it's not on a freeway, he's going to, what street is that, Daddy? Johnson Street, sing Johnson Street. And he expects me to sing it. And there's some days that I just, I'm like, top of the morning to you, and I'm ready to sing it at the highest tone. And other days it's just like, and today was one of those days where he's not only asking me to sing the sign, but reading other signs, construction ahead or whatever have you. And I answered him, and I know I was less than pleased with how I answered, where I actually was just, road work ahead. And I thought, what does he need though? He's not just doing that to do that, He's doing that because he has to get something out. Just like our kids may need, like they have an itch that needs to be scratched from a sensory standpoint. When there's agitation or anxiety, the hug or the squeeze is needed from sensory. And we can forget as people going about doing what we're doing, depending on what we're in the middle of. And we're the parent. We're the ones that are going to take a bullet and kill somebody for our kid. But at the same time, we can forget that, wait a minute, this person is struggling with getting out what they need to get out. There's a reason why that takes place. Anyway, that's a long-winded ramble of realization, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. I mean, that's for my books. We have 3 things that we try to teach. One is to normalize stimming. Stimming is typical. It's normal. Let's just get it out of the way. See someone flapping their hands, jumping around, verbally repeating something, whatever it is, leave them alone or give them a smile or whatever it is. Second, all behavior is communication. Period. End of sentence. End of story.
100%.
All behavior.
That's exactly it.
And that sounds like that's
That applies to everybody. That's not some special needs thing.
everybody.
Right.
The kind of psychological stuff I can pull on my husband because I understand this concept. I'm just saying. I'm like,
what's your husband's name?
Cranky.
Yeah, no.
His name's Brady.
Okay.
Brady.
Okay, Brady. Just in case you want, but then again, Brady, this isn't a secret. He probably knows this. I'm sure he does, and it still works.
Well, and here's the thing: is it's always with the best of interests. So it's not in an effort to manipulate or control, but it's in an effort to say you have a need. Whether you are communicating it very effectively or well is kind of beside the point. If I can help you address the need or help you kind of do some emotional work to get to what the actual need is, then great. We can get to the bottom of things. It's not really that the dishes are sitting in the sink. That's not really the issue. So let's talk about what happened at work. Like, how you feeling today? Like, what?
The dishes in the sink are the preview. The real problem is the movie.
And that's what I'm saying. So yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you don't go from child is diagnosed, I'm observing these things, and I have benefits for my children because of my experience with special needs community in my life prior. You don't just go from that to now I have 2 books. How fill that gap for us, if you will.
Yeah. My older son, as he grew up and developed, I feel like being the parent of a special needs child just requires more thoroughness. I had someone ask me, I do author acceptance presentations. Author acceptance. Do you accept me as an author? Please accept me. Autism acceptance presentations.
I do. We accept you as an author. Just FYI.
Thank you. I was really nervous to tell you that, and I get
sometimes communication is behavior too.
Just FYI.
That's true. Communication is behavior.
If we weren't sure that you were an author, your shirt.
Author. I wear this to all of my book stuff because they don't realize somehow that me sitting in a booth with a whole bunch of books means that I wrote them.
You wrote them, yeah.
They need like a real sign.
There it is. There it is.
Okay.
Sign. Author. By the way,
author.
You're now accepted as an author.
Yeah.
But we were talking about autism.
Autism acceptance presentations. Yeah. I do them, I can say across the world because I've done a few in Korea. So whether it's in person or virtually, generally younger classes. And I had a second grader raise their hand. And usually the kind of questions you get from young elementary age kids after you've just talked about autism and stimming and, ear defenders and why that would be helpful. And they're like, I really like your hair.
Yeah. Totally.
And you're like, love it. Thanks so much. Anything else? They'd be like, what? I really like your hair. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And that's okay. But one person raised their hand and asked, is it hard to be his mom?
Oh,
that. Oof, size large. Okay. So I was like, I just took I said one of those statements that gives me some time. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, how about the question that allows you to take a beat to go back to the corner and regroup.
So guys, how are we going to approach this? I don't want to be disingenuous. I don't want to be lying. I don't want any blame, any, icky feelings to be aimed toward my child, because that is not the situation. So my answer was just, parenting is hard for any parent, right? So they asked me about being a mom. So being a mom is hard for any parenting situation. My kid requires specific help that I don't have a lot of answers for. There aren't a lot of answers available and around for how I can help him best. So whether it's books or whether it's shows or whether doctors or specialists are telling me these things, I just have to put in more effort to dig around for those answers to meet his needs. So that has nothing to do with what he is doing or if he has a hard day or an easy day. It's just to be able to meet his needs. I have to dig around a little bit more. And by a little bit, I mean a lot of it. And that's part of what I'm doing here in your classroom is I'm trying to share that information with you so that if you ever become the parent of an autistic child, or if you become a practitioner that deals with autistic children, you're a dentist and an autistic child comes into your dentist practice, that maybe you'll remember some of these things that I've talked about, and that you can be the more sources of information that parents like me are trying to find. So it's less of a dig, right? That the community as a whole is just raised in its ability to meet the needs of autistic people because they're more informed. And I mean,
that is a fabulous answer, by the way. That is,
and like afterwards, I was like,
oh. but honestly, that's significant.
She was in second grade.
The second grader asking a question like that.
Yeah,
but
very insightful.
I think it's. I mean, I think that is an insightful question. But what a powerful answer.
Well, it's true because I totally understand. A lot of autistic adults have communicated very loudly how awful it can feel to have your parent take on this role of like martyrdom, that because they exist the way they do, I'm a martyr for their cause. That they have made me suffer in this way that has, made me this elevated being. And I can imagine if that was like, if some, and getting that kind of intertwined in a very confusing way with advocacy, that can be really hard to pull apart because a lot of these people are saying it in a way to say, I'm proud of the journey that I've been on and of the efforts that we make. And I'm proud of that every day is really hard and we do it. And how that could be uncomfortable, and not uncomfortable, but really traumatic for a child to grow up hearing that their parents are great because they survived the burden of your existence. Like, imagine.
Right. No.
And then how you address that.
Yeah, it would seem fairly. Writing a book is a lofty goal. I think at this day and age, there are more people that are able to write books and fulfill that aspiration, whether they self-publish or whatever path they take. And I do want to get back to that. But I want to ask you this. It would seem that as opposed to writing a book, as a parent, for someone that's listening or watching, being someone who gives presentations on autism acceptance, because some parents don't have the wherewithal to do more than just get through the day, depending on whether or not they're single or how much care their child needs.
Amen.
But for the parent who's thinking, how do I turn the challenge into purpose? Whether they're, like in our case, we provide financial service education and opportunity to the special needs community. If you're going to write a book or become a therapist, those things seem bigger. It would seem that being someone who presents an autism acceptance would be an easier path. It's as simple as, let me speak to them from my child's perspective and put them in my child's shoe. Is that correct? And if so, how did you get to doing that?
That is so tricky. So, I mean, my children's whole growing up, there was, my oldest is 12. So the ideas for books, and really it was fulfilling a need that I saw a huge gap in literature. And honestly, it was less a gap in literature and more a gap in the neurodivergent community. So I see autistic individuals, ADHD individuals, and neurotypical individuals, and they all just seem to be in these separate groups. So how can we bridge that gap in an effective way? And learning is messy. You make mistakes. And I can understand from an autistic person's perspective that it can be really traumatizing to be so heavily involved in the teaching of this is how I function. And to have somebody say, no, you're wrong, that's not right, is really awful to hear. So I believe it's more the burden of the other people. Now, what's tricky is the other people don't care. It's not them. It's not their life that's affected. And to be fair, it's difficult to care at level 1000 for every single cause that is out there. So I don't personally take that personally. I don't take that personally. I understand that. I'm not as hyper focused on, for example, cancer, because I don't personally
You're not
have
impacted by it.
Correct. And that doesn't mean I don't have compassion. I wouldn't, consider donating, that I can't listen with a very empathetic ear and very well to somebody who struggles with something like that. But it's not what I spend all of my time advocating for acceptance or awareness of. And so I understand why people wouldn't be like, well, tell me more about autism advocacy. They don't have that internal parental desperation and drive to make sure you understand my kid. I do. So I will gladly take that on because it means a better world for my kid, but simultaneously a better world for all autistic people. And often the things that I talk about also relate to people that have ADHD. And then when you get right down to the base of it, it is that all behavior is communication. So then it ends up relating back to everybody.
If we can, just try and then, well, tell us this if you can. We'll do one at a time. Just want to get back to the book. How do you then get to? Because some people may decide, you know what, I want my child to be accepted in school. I don't know if people are aware that they know why he may stim, why these things may take place. How did you get to presenting to schools and groups? Because you're not just presenting autism acceptance to your kid's school. It's not like you're a member of the PTA and that's all you do. You're doing this on a larger scale. How did you go about doing that exactly?
The need is there. So when you come into the parenting zone, period, you don't know what to expect on the day-to-day, right? You have some ideas of what you've seen in movies and things like that, but not on the day-to-day. I thought that schools, very ignorantly, would just be more prepared, would just be more aware. They are the paid professionals when it comes to dealing with all sorts of children and rainbows and sunshines and what have you. I quickly learned from necessity that the Lord bless our teachers and our administrators, but there are outrageous deficiencies in understanding different needs and different diagnoses. And to be fair, schools are outrageously underfunded. So I can see how the cycle continues, that being underfunded means you don't get as qualified people. The people who are highly qualified are going somewhere else where they're actually going to get paid. The workload is less, et cetera, et cetera. But then I realized in that it's my job. I'm the only person in this entire room, this IEP table, that is here for my son and my son only. The teacher, and that's not a fault of theirs, the teacher has to consider all their students.
Absolutely.
The admin is considering all their teachers, their budgets, their people above them, below them, etc. So I had to learn how to make people uncomfortable in the most appropriate way possible, get very lawyer-like real quick. A lot of my TikTok videos that people seem to cling to are the ones where I talk about how to effectively deal with schools. And what's interesting is, like one of them, for example, was about the need to collect data and that you have a right to the data that's being collected on behalf of your child. And it's supposed to be being collected and to get everything in writing. And people are like, people took that really offensively. I'm not sure how, why, whatever, but it was because you're overloading the school system. You are, how can you expect teachers to do that? That's just ridiculous. And I'm like, ew, it's kind of legally what is supposed to be happening. And so it's tricky because I understand on one hand, they're not being paid for enough for what they're doing. On the other hand, that does not affect how I will advocate for my child. I can hear that. I can sympathize. I can vote certain ways and for certain people. I can advocate for you as a teacher to have more personnel in your classroom to say the resources available are not adequate for my child's needs. I can absolutely do that on your behalf. that doesn't change. I don't say, therefore, oh, you're busy. Oh, okay. My child doesn't need to have a free and appropriate education then. Their civil rights don't need to be met. That's fine. That's
So
not where the burden lies.
Your suggestion was that the teacher put things in writing, or that you was that the parent do so?
The teacher / admin. So for example, if a teacher or admin calls you about an incident, hey, just want to let you know, Joey had this incident today. That phone call did not happen legally because there's no record of it.
Okay.
So if that happens, there's no need to be like rude. You just say, thank you so much. I'm so sorry to hear that. If you could get that back to me in writing, just your best take on what happened and send that over, that would be fantastic. I really appreciate it. And people took that as me being demanding and unreasonable and
interesting.
Yeah. And again, the stress of being a teacher right now, especially of children with special needs, I'm not saying that that's not a very real stress. I'm saying that the burden of that deficiency within our public education does not lie on the rights of my disabled child. And if you can't tell, I'm going to get a little more serious, concise, but always appropriate with my language when I talk about the burden of that deficiency does not lie on the rights of my disabled child.
It's interesting too. It's funny because that's why human beings never cease to fascinate me, because I've never heard that before. That approach, we took it upon ourselves to make note of everything, but like any and everything else, you're talking about asking. You're not talking about toting a gun and going into the school and demanding it. So you ask for it. So it's interesting that people would do that. So then tell us now, if you will, as we wind down, as the minutes always fly by, how do you then go from the head to the page when it comes to the notion, the idea of writing a book? Is it as simple for you as there's a need, I'm just going to go fill it?
I mean, over the space of 12 years, yes.
Yeah.
So seeing again and again and again that it's not just this one teacher. It's not just this one administrator. It's not just this grandparent. It's not just this cousin. It's not just this new school that we moved to in this other area in Korea. It's not just this Korean preschool. It's just everybody. And so these stories that we have are all true stories, meaning that they happen. So I don't have to make these stories up, which is great. I just have to tell them in a way that is literarily, there's another made up word for you. I'm a writer, that are palatable.
Funnily enough, I understood that.
Funnily, right? Literarily, that's a tongue twister, that are that convey the messages that we want to convey. And in each, you'll probably love this, in each of these stories is one person in the community who just makes magic happen. So I don't want to give away the story, but for example, in Alex and the Drummer, the books are always told from the drummer's perspective. So you'll see, like, it talks about how he stand outside a cell phone store that he tries so hard every day, all day, to play and do his job, but nobody notices me and I'm all alone and it's really sad. And I feel like we can all feel that way, right? That I am just trying and doing everything I can and I'm doing my job and it's not working. My son, look at how cute that is, was the first person to notice him and be really excited to see him. And so the drummer was stoked. That's not what I wrote literature wise. There's me in the front seat with my pink hair. Now, really in this situation, we were using the drummer as a transitional tool to help my kid get from home to school, because that was a tough transition. I don't want to go to school. Oh, but don't you want to see the drummer on the way there? He wants to say hi and say hello to you. Who was the drummer? Besides the inflatable guy, it was me in the front seat going, well, hello, how are you today? I've missed you very much. And we'd slow down as we go by. He'd roll down his window and he would say, I don't know, hi, I missed you. I go, oh, you missed me, my boy. Did you keep all your clothes on today at school? Because that's something we struggled with. Yeah, I keep my clothes on. Well, that's fantastic. I'm so excited that you're making good choice. And again, this is just me, like in desperation, trying to get him to school. And as you know, changes in routine can make anybody, but particularly autistic people, feel unsafe. Not just bothered or annoyed, but it's a lack of safety. This
Anxiety,
routine means I will be okay. When this routine is not here, I don't know. I don't know if I will be okay. So what happens is we drive by one day, and this really happened, and the drummer was deflated on the side of the road. And I know. And what I love is that whether people know or don't know autistic people well, or their tendencies, or the situation that would cause, everybody, by the time we get to that part in the book, is like, oh, no.
Yeah. I'm already having anxiety just hearing that. I was like, oh my gosh, the drummer got shot.
Yeah. He's down. Somebody call somebody. And what had happened is a construction man had just come and unplugged the plug because he had to use it for some kind of thing he was doing over there.
What kind of thing was it?
What was that?
What kind of thing was it?
Like a
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
right, one of those. Obviously, I'm like a professional handy person. Like
clearly, because that's how they operate.
I fix things. Yeah, up and down like this. I'm holding it like a flute. I'm a musician in me. And so for us, obviously, crisis as a family. From the drummer's perspective, because again, the story is from the drummer's perspective, he experiences a meltdown, but physically and emotionally. So here he is deflating. And he says this feeling of unplugged. And I have had, and that's what I've observed from my kids, but that's also what I've heard from my autistic friends, is that it's not a matter of choosing, that it's just unplugged. I can't. The things that help me go and function as a human being are gone right now in this meltdown. And I'm not capable of making decisions, choices, etc. And so what happens is there's this whole kind of moment where he is deflated. He can't see anything. And I know this voice. The way he says his letter R, could it be? My audience of one? Oh, my boy, I'm so sorry I've let you down. I try to lift my arms, to raise my sticks. I must play for him, but I can't do it. What will he say? My one fan to see me like this. I'm so ashamed. Please don't look, Alex. Not now. And so the desire to perform and keep doing what you need to be doing, and the shame that's often associated with that, when really there's no shame in it. It's just you can't. But people are expecting this of you. And so what happened is my boy laid down right next to him and with him. And the drummer loved it. You know, he lay next to me with me. And really, when you're walking by this situation, from a parental perspective or an observer's perspective, my kid is full kicking, screaming, sobbing on the ground. But in this moment, when I read people the story here, they're like, of course he did. He's going to do that. That's not to see what just happened. Of course he's going to do that. And so suddenly these people are accepting this, you know, moderately different and strange behavior, because they understand what it's communicating and what's happening. And they just they get it organically. Little kids get it. Their drummers unplugged. They all panic. And then in the end, something happens and it's the best. And the construction.
What it tells you is it's another example of how we're more alike than we are uncommon. We used to say this. We would say there's no such thing as special needs. Everyone has the same need, but the mechanism or the path by which we get those needs might be different if there's a diagnosis or something that we're dealing with. And you know, Albert Einstein had the saying, you know, which is that we can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness as which it occurs. So when the level of consciousness is right in the middle of the moment, in the eye of the storm, dead in the center, you can't really quite figure it out. But you have to be able to step out to say, well, wait a minute, what might my child need? What is my child trying to tell me? To be able to sit back and peacefully say that is a challenge when there's screaming taking place, and especially if it's in a public place, and especially if you have too high of a priority on how things look to other people.
Oh, nope.
They may think, and you gotta let go of that. And again,
Yes.
who does that apply to? Everybody in life, because we all need to let go of that more so than anything.
Right.
As usual, the time is just run right through us. Wow.
Yeah. It's gone by so fast. We put up on the screen, and I know Sean Hall in our studio in Hawaii has put it up in the chat as well. Link to where you can find the book, Alex and the Drummer. I've also put up on the site now a Kickstarter project. So, Laura, really quick, will you talk about the Kickstarter project a second, and then we'll wrap it up.
If you're not familiar with Kickstarter, it's like a GoFundMe, but for small businesses. And rather than just giving to a good cause, which it is, it's like a pre-sale for my book. So you can buy the book. And this is the second book, by the way, called Alex and the Muffin Man. And it's another true story. We talk about food aversions. Can somebody point me to the other books about food aversions? Because I can't find any about children's books that talk about food aversions. And again, another person in the community who stepped up and we call them the Miracle Maker series, because it's these people who just do this small thing in their life that is a huge thing for us. And so I think, we're very vulnerable when we're in public as the parents of special needs kids, and so are they, right? So when they have a struggle, we get this, how are people going to react? We get the best and worst because we're just in that situation. And so we are highlighting the best. And I have like maybe 10 of these kinds of stories. So I've already written the third one. It's Alex and Santa. Again, another true story, where this guy who talks like this, who literally looked like Santa Claus, came up and just did the nicest thing for my boy. And he had big old mouth. Anyway, so at the Kickstarter, you can buy the second book. All the funds, literally every penny, goes to how many books I can purchase from our printer who's overseas. So I get like no money, but it's okay. We get to make the world a more accepting and understanding place. That's why I present the books. That's why I did children's books, because I want other people to grow in this. And when people's minds are young, you should see they just like accept it. They're just like, yeah, yeah, they'll shake their hands because they're feeling nervous. And there's no bias that they're arguing against within themselves. They just accept it, and it's really lovely.
Right. Beautiful. Alex.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
He just starts talking. Can you imagine? Took a wild haunted turn.
Laura, I knew this was going to be high energy. I didn't realize that our hour was going to go by so quickly, we're always surprised every show, but this has been a fascinating conversation. And I know that we could talk for another hour with you. And I hope that we get a chance to do that with you more. You're fascinating. And I love your positioning. I love your articulation of the issues that every, special needs parent faces, and your willingness to kind of deal with stuff head on. The fact that you've put this now into book form and created an opportunity for people of all walks of life to get a little insight and a little understanding into the world that we as parents of special needs families experience. It's amazing. Love your energy, love the magenta, love the whole thing. This has been fantastic. And I think that what you've done is, we wrap up the show. I generally say at the end of every show that what's needed now more than ever is empathy and love. I think your entire conversation has been about that.
Compassion. Compassion. Yep.
Yeah.
Above everything else, empathy, love, and compassion. And so I'm so grateful that you got to be on this with us today. And hopefully that other people will see this and get a chance to see that, because, you're a firecracker with an amazing message, and hopefully Brady will get to those dishes soon, but I can't wait to see more of what you create, and more stories of Alex's travels and his trajectory, and your other son as well. And thank you for being on the program. Thank you for everybody listening on See Catching Us Live on Facebook and on our YouTube channel and on podcasts everywhere, and WSTXM radio. Hopefully you guys got a lot of value out of today's conversation. Really just fascinating world that you're creating for yourselves, your family, and the rest of us. Sean Hall in Hawaii, we love you. Thank you for supporting us and supporting what we're doing here. I'm going to throw it to Sean Francis to close us out, but thank you again, Laura. What an amazing conversation. Holy cow. Absolutely incredible.
Fantastic conversation. Everyone that's taken the time, whether you're watching live or you're hearing this after the fact, thank you for supporting our efforts and what we do. Thank you, Laura, for your time today. I want to thank the women in my life without whom I would not be. That is my amazing wife, Laura, and my mom, Jan. And just remember that wherever you are, everybody needs the same thing. Everybody needs to be seen, needs to be heard, needs to know that they matter, and needs to know that they're loved. And Laura, once we end here with the live with the broadcast, stick around, don't go anywhere, and continue to watch us wherever you are as you hear us. We love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And don't forget our mission, our crusade, change the lives of 1,000 families in the special needs community with financial literacy and other ways that we can impact. That's our goal for the next 12 months. And hopefully you'll want to be a part of that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Laura. It's been amazing.
Thank you.